This is People and Their Poems, a podcast about the poems that make a difference in our world. People and Their Poems is presented by Oronog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us today.
Welcome to People and Their Poems podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Carlson, and I'm here today with Prithvijeet Sinha on the other side of the world in India to talk about his new collection of poems, A Verdant Life, which was recently issued by Bookleaf Publishing. Welcome, Prithvijeet, and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you so very much.
So, I've been reading your poetry for a while now, and you've been a part of our Poetry Roundtable since we started it, and Oronog has published you in some of its collections. So I know you cover a vast array of topics in your poetry, and you try different forms and lengths of poetry. But can you tell us about what inspired you to create this collection?
Yes, thank you for that wonderful question, first of all. What inspires me to write poetry on a diurnal basis is, of course, nature, as I've said in many previous occasions. And as a poet, sometimes I try to demystify my own observations and my own influences. And sometimes it's a great mystery. It's a great cosmic mystery as to how the idea for a particular poem or the structure for a poem germinates, becomes a seedling, and then it slowly, grows into a plant, and then possibly an evergreen tree. So my inspiration is also to always open up my eyes to the vast possibilities around me. And of course, my city helps that profoundly because of its landscape, because of its architecture. And I'm realizing, and I'm glad you asked that question, maybe 6 to 7 years back, I was not as aware or as open to interpreting the natural surroundings around me as I've come to develop in the last 2 to 3 years. That is where my photographic eye and attention for detail has only magnified. So for me, the inspiration is from the everyday. It can be a sunbeam. It could be a ripple in the river. It is, of course, the birds, the bird songs, the sheer tranquility of the environment around me. And of course, when I read poems like poems from people such as Mary Oliver, who I think has contributed so much to this world when it comes to celebrating the intimate, intricate nuances of nature. And to many people, she holds such reverence regarding the natural world. So the inspiration is, of course, drawn from all these sources. And for this collection, I already had many poems ready with me. And when I took the leap towards compiling them as a full-fledged collection, I thought that it was fortuitous. It was, perhaps the creative muses, the creative gods who were steering me in that direction. That take the leap, don't think too much about the consequences. And I had at least 9 to 10 poems ready. And then because it was a 21-day challenge during which you had to create poems or post poems which hadn't been shared anywhere else. So I created a few poems on the spur of the moment, and it felt like it was a very organic channel towards bringing this book to fruition and to a verdant life. So that's the journey, basically.
I see. You mentioned that it's a mystery sometimes where the poems come from, and that makes me think of another member of our Poetry Roundtable, Samuel Gluck, who often will say, I don't know where it came from. Sometimes the muse just speaks to me and I have to write it down. It really is mysterious how the inspiration comes. I'm curious, though, you said in the past 2.5 or so years, you've actually, your focus has become even sharper. Do you think that has anything to do with the amount of writing you do, that you're so consistent in getting pen to paper?
Yes, I think so. The more prolific you are, I mean, it's not just about publishing those works and getting them into the public domain. It is about developing and nurturing a habit that you have to write something, if not every day, then every second day. And in a week, I guess what I prescribe and subscribe to personally from a poetic point of view is that any idea that reaches your mind or is just, uh, subsisting at the threshold of your mind, you should commit it to paper the moment it comes to you, or the ideas when they come to you, because that creates a Leviathan kind of structure where you have those words, those expressions. And I'm glad you asked this question because this poetry collection, as you had read it in the acknowledgement section, it's also a tribute to my teachers who taught me from standards third to fifth. One of my teachers, Ma'am Thal, she taught me the importance of helping words. She said, if you ever want to even create a sentence or an essay, composition, or a poem in future, just write down those words and they will help and aid you in the journey ahead. And Ma'am Thal's words continue to resonate in my mind. It is as if I'm in the same classroom. I'm in the fifth C, a standard classroom in Lamartine Boys, um, sitting right in front of her, and she's delivering those lines. And they feel almost prophetic because when you look back, you realize that good teachers, good compeers, they are guides and philosophers. They help you realize your dreams even before you have the wherewithal or the words or the articulation to bring those words to, notice. So she was a great conduit. And so that is what I would like to recommend to everybody, that uh, it has helped me immensely in my journey. And the fact, as you rightly said, that the more I write, the more I realize that I can translate my words and there is no brain fog around the ideas and the concepts that I want to deliver and conceptualize, first of all. So, very humbly, I would like to say that yes, the commitment to writing and taking in those ideas every day help a lot, because consistency in life takes you a long way. That is the only maxim that I would like to impart from my side.
That's really, really helpful. And I'm thinking about your teacher and being a teacher. I think the real lesson of a good teacher and what your teacher gave you was that your life has meaning and value, and what you want to
Yeah.
express about life deserves to be heard. And I think
Yes.
we're living in a world where people lean on AI to get the quick answer, and maybe move away from believing in themselves as thinkers and beings capable of beautiful thought. So I think the fact that you write every day, could I just ask, do you write on paper or do you prefer a digital format?
First of all, my first and foremost device is, of course, the paper. I'll always, adhere to that traditional method. There is nothing that can beat the smell of paper or the feeling that you experience when you put pen to paper, as the profound expression goes. And it's a misnomer that you have to use the word profound for putting pen to paper in today's times, because of course people are using Grok, Chat GPT, and AI, words that I hate vehemently. Because I think you should not rob yourself um, of the creative spark. Because, see, ultimately, and you have a lot of life experience, a lot more life experience than me, both personally and professionally. Ultimately, it's your own life that you communicate to yourself. When you go to sleep, you retain all the ideas, all the concepts, all the experiences that have gone in front of your eyes. And when you sit and think, it is to yourself. There may be 100 people in the room, but you are the only solitary creature who has to negotiate your way around those people, the individuality of your own self and your ideas. So for me, that individuality begins with putting the pen on paper. And of course, sometimes I have to balance and offset that when I do not have the paper, when I'm in my, official capacity in my workspace. So I write down the helping words in my, notepad. And sometimes I use the notes on my mobile. But I have to, and it's a must for me. It's a requisite for me. I have to write the poem down first in my little notebooks or in my little copies. And then, of course, I translate them into putting them, on the digital space. So that to me is an extension of the paper, the rustle of paper.
Absolutely. And I think the phrase you have used that you got from your teacher, the helping words, I'm going to hold on to that. That's just lovely.
Yes.
And we're speaking in the lingua franca of English, right? But you mentioned translation, and you and I have had this conversation before in the context of the roundtable. Can you just
Yes.
speak to a little bit about your creative process as you navigate the many languages you speak? Do you write? Do you start? What language do you start in? Does it vary? And I mean, the expressions you have in A Verdant Heart are so articulate and clear and beautiful. And in English, how do you get there?
Thank you for that question once again. Your questions are so lovely. So, when I sit down to write, the primary mode of operation, the modus operandi is, of course, English. But once again, during the course of these last 2 to 3 years, I'm going to say post 2022, I found that my aesthetic leanings uh, became more attuned to the natural world, as you said, and became much more sharper than I even realized. Once again, it was a mystery. How is my self expression becoming the way it is? And so, what I do is I perhaps think about those expressions and those concepts in English, but then I sort of, direct them towards writing in my own native tongue, which is Hindi. And because I cannot write in Bengali, which is my mother tongue, which is my maternal tongue, and it has a beautiful script and it is a beautiful language, as I've mentioned it in a previous podcast. And once again, that opportunity itself has been presented by Ornog. So huge credit, due credit to you and the Ornog Mountain family. And then what has happened in recent years is that it has become very organic. It has become very natural because I seem to have found my footing. And when people like you and other editors and like-minded people, give me the impetus to shine and allow me to breathe with my verses, then negotiating around languages becomes easier. You realize that you can write in Hindi, translate it into English, or vice versa. And of course, in the Hindustani language, in Urdu. And the fact that the poem, An Evening in the Countryside, the second poem in this collection, was recited during one of our roundtables, I think so back in May or June. And you made me recite the poem in its original language. Um, it keeps surprising me how wonderful that gesture feels. It feels so personal and at the same time universal. And I hope more editors, more writers, and poets, when they guide symposiums or podcasts such as yours, have the sensibility to allow speakers and writers of other languages to enunciate the words in the languages they identify with, because then it becomes a lingual, bridge between worlds. So once again, thank you very, very much.
It's a pleasure, and I think part of a problem being American and being curious about languages is there are so few people to talk to. And I have a dear friend from Brazil who is a world language teacher, and she speaks Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and English. And she insists it's about talking to people. It's about communication, not using apps or programs or online platforms. And I feel like English is the aggressor language that's steamrolling over languages around the world, and um,
Yes.
how to correct for that. There has to be a way. And I'm just having this thought, my friend, that it would be really very cool to have a bilingual collection of your poetry. That would be very, very beautiful.
Thank you so very much. That has been on my mind.
So a project down the road. Would you read a couple poems from the collection for our listeners?
Absolutely. Um, In fact, before I read my particular poem, the poem that I'm going to read first for today, Quilters, I have to say I wrote that poem around April to May 2025. And then during one of our roundtables, you recited a wonderful poem. It sort of, book ended the conversation so beautifully about the Ukrainian quilts. And I
Mhm.
was sitting there and I was thinking, wow, I wrote a poem about quilters based on the local artisans and the artisans of India across all states, especially pertaining to the chikankari embroidery workers in my city and region. And I was thinking, wow, that relates so wonderfully. It's like a confluence of influences. And Sandyman could do that so lucidly. And I was sitting there and feeling so validated that, yes, I wrote that poem. It may find or it may not find a space in the final collection, but there may be a time where I can share it in another publication space or perhaps in other roundtables. And so it means so much to me. And hence, I'm going to read that poem for you. It's poem number 14 from the collection, and it's on page 35. It's called Quilters. The best quilters know that being a man comes with a territory of gentleness. Extreme gentleness, too, can work wonders. The soft endorsements are made by beacons of light, and the hands that have felt a baby's head sew and stitch the tactility of their palms, fingers, and thumbs, unlike others. Imagine one of those finely woven quilts on the chalk's dusty abdomen, and often given the most inauspicious welcome around the neighborhood of artisans. When a quilt escapes the warmth of any human body and is given away to the winnows of cultural ruin, it is not just the bodies that fear the cold. When the facilities of gentleness suffer these blows, a quilter's heart breaks. It is gentleness that he learns with his hands. When these same seeds of creation are thrown away on dusty side streets like alms for blind horses, they stop and sigh. You should listen to the throbbing sigh of these hands. Nothing is sadder to their craft. Yet all they know is to quilt. The fabrics are veins extending from these timeless hands. Thank you.
That is gorgeous. Oh my goodness. And
Thank you.
as you were reading, I was thinking of my friend Natalia in Ukraine, who's insisting on making those quilts and asserting the beauty and validity of her culture. And you were talking about what happens when we don't, and the grief
Yes.
of that, and how beautiful these things are. And oh,
Yes.
thank you so much. Thank you. That is amazing.
Can I share an anecdote about one of the imagery in this poem?
Yeah, let's hear it.
When I wrote these lines that imagine one of those finely woven quills on the chalk's dusty abdomen. Now, chalk is basically a crowded area. It refers to a crowded area, which
Mhm.
may be congested among the bazaars or the marketplaces. And chalk is also the name of an area which represents the old city of Lucknow, the old walled city of Lucknow, which has, sort of the classical mansions and the palaces. And during many of my trips around town, I've seen during the winters that many of these finely woven quilts, and you can see the fine details on these quilts, they're sometimes they sometimes lie abandoned on these dusty side streets. And they are used, of course, by people who may be homeless or who are vagrants, who are mentally disturbed. They do not understand the value of that particular quilt, but it also comforts them, it covers their bodies. And so, from that image, you can not only trace a line towards your own sense of privilege and the opposite of that in your very society, the dichotomies that lie in that very society, but you also understand how poverty is not only omnipotent, but it can actually happen to anybody because many of these people, as I'm coming to find out over the years, were intellectuals. They were people who came from the middle classes. Abandonment, betrayal from their loved ones sent them hurtling towards the streets and embracing the streets and then losing their minds and not realizing um, how the trajectory came to be. And if poetry is an exercise in empathy, it's also an acknowledgement of the vast chasms that exist between you and I, in terms of the universal thread that we try to trace. And I know my words cannot solve the problem, but at least if I'm looking at that image, I can I can at least have the felicity and the decency to not look away when these truths hit the bullseye. That's what I wanted to share.
So well said, and so sensitive. Thank you, Prithvijeet, for bringing that anecdote into this conversation about that poem. It means a lot, which is also why this book deserves wide circulation. It really does. It's some amazing
With
stuff.
your blessings, it will find a life of its own. Thank you so very much for saying that. That's what every poet wants. That's what I want to. My words should travel.
Absolutely. Will you treat us with another one?
Absolutely. Now you may recall that I had missed the April roundtable because I was sick with flu. And
Mhm.
it was like a flu that traveled through the whole city and the region, as it often happens anywhere in the world. So, and once again, I cannot read the poem without telling you a little bit about the backstory. And I'm glad I'm going to read this poem now. What happened was really mysterious and at the same time beautiful. I was bedridden because, the flu can really break your body when it's on a severe level. After a week or so, I realized that this koel, this cuckoo bird, was sort of sharing his or her songs with me during the night time. Not morning, not evening, as you would, imagine them to do. So this cuckoo or koel completely broke away with the pattern, and it seemed that that cuckoo was singing to me. It was as if it was a hand of God that was comforting me that you will be all right. It's just your body that is broken, not your spirit. And of course, it's unbelievable and incredible when you look at it, but it really happened. From where I'm sitting right now, the cuckoo was singing its songs across this room. There's a hotel right next to my apartment building. And so it was sitting on the ledge. And usually there are pigeons and doves and minor birds which come there. But this cuckoo started singing every night for at least 10 to 12 days. And the funny or mysterious thing is, as soon as I recuperated, that voice completely disappeared. So when I believe in the craft and the poetry around me, I do believe that God works in mysterious ways. I really feel, because I don't feel very deeply about the religious idea of God. And as you have also shared, the idea of God is about charity and bridging worlds with empathy. And that bird, it felt to me, was what God should be, a paragon of nature above anything.
Nice.
So, so this poem is dedicated to that Samaritan, as I would like to call that bird. Samaritan. These have been dreamless sights, blank atrophies that a fortnight brought to bear on the ends of untouched wood. Luck does not motivate them, but to know is to feel the abjection of having colorless streams like dots in the middle of the forehead, the stigma and personal outrage of having legs that don't move out of billowy cotton covers. toes too shy to show the rough archaeology of the exiled state. All of it is real. And then the koel sings in the middle of a deserted night. A Samaritan sharpening his talons, a man on a ledge across this room, edifying the most accursed minutes, and never too proud to break his routine. For a fortnight, he has sung and filled the air out of the morbid innovations of the dark. He has been a good friend. So he must know that today my pencil made unwanted shapes on paper because words are precious. Words are sinews that bind this body to itself. But of course, he knows all of that. There's no great purpose in him sending his voice out like unbidden shapes on a dark parchment. He holds words without meaning and sends them flying. It is what I expect to do now that the worst of the ambush is over, and I can hear him as clearly as the brightest notes of the sun. The morbid innovations of the dark get subdued with the silence now. I hear him. Thank you. Feel so triumphant to read this poem.
Thank you. That last line so connects you to the gifts of that bird and the bird itself. And you're both writers. It was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we round out this podcast with one more poem? Am I being greedy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. What I'm going to do is I am going to read a poem which is dedicated to the obstinacy of all poets and how we take our revenge without resorting to arms, without resorting to any violence, but with our minds against people who like to caricature us, lampoon us, and put us in boxes, labeling us as the others or as dreamers. And this poem is an act of not vindictiveness, but an act of reclamation regarding how poets operate in this world against all odds. So here is poem number 19 from a Verdant Heart, Isle of Bards. Pages 52 to pages 56. Isle of Bards. Nobody should witness the birth of trauma. I've said it to the mercenary who has turned an isle of poets into a shallow emporium of cheap paperbacks. Fruitless though has been his dream to raise private chambers out of the sacred woods where bards meditated and wrote masterpieces. Legend has it that one bard was compelled by such synchrony within these hills that, captured by a fever under a most probable cold wave, he developed purple fingers and had one toe in each foot taken by fungal infection. He had not left his desk or the stubborn credulity of this hilly basin for nearly 40 days. Apropos of that man's myth, the folks here fell into the habit of saying, nobody should witness the birth of trauma, knowing perhaps how it ended for the old bard in the outfield. He was taken by the cold wave. Where he once lived, in his agreeable little cottage, is a rented cabin for museum visitors who mostly smoke and talk too much amongst themselves. The mercenary. The mercenary lives not too far from where I write now. Sometimes I think the birth of trauma was never associated firstly with the bard's purple fingers, the supposed cold wave, or the fungal infection that grew lichen-like colorations on his feet. Just as I think about that myth and the nature of trauma, a cabal of trucks and building materials sound their arrival. Nobody should witness the birth of trauma, especially if it is destined to kill a place without actual physical despotism. Nobody should witness the birth of trauma, especially if it is destined to kill a place without actual physical despotism. Thank you so very much.
Oh, thank you, Prithvijeet. That's amazing. Um, just your awareness of the environment and what is happening, and the suggested significance just brings the reader in. I think it's amazing, and I wish you every success with this book that is available on Amazon. Where else?
It's available on Amazon. Of course, the publisher, the original publisher, Bookleaf Publishing's, ebook site. And of course, it's also available in such prolific platforms such as Barnes and Noble, Goodreads, eBooks. It's also available in eBay Australia, and around the world. There are so many links. So I'm going to mention a few links for those who do not live in America or the Indian subcontinent. If you're in Scandinavia, it is available on the Saxo Books website. If you are in Italy, if it is available on Feltrinelli, which I feel very happy about because it is also the bookstore which houses a writer like Ocean Vuong, which I'm a huge fan of. And there are many other links, which of course, if you go to my Instagram account, you can find. And of course, it's available on Amazon India and Amazon USA, the global market as such. And really thankful for having this book, be a part of the whole wide world in every possible territory. So it's a very grateful moment for me, very happy moment, but it also humbles me to go further with what I do.
I can't wait to see what comes next, and I'm thrilled that you're a part of our Oronog poetry community, and I hope you keep contributing and being in the roundtable because you enrich the texture, the depth, and the breadth of what we share as poets around the world. So thank you.
Thank you
for that.
Thank you so very much.
This has been People and Their Poems, presented by Oronog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check the show notes for more information about this episode. Visit oronogmountainpublishing.com for more information about our services and writing opportunities. And visit peopleandtheirpoems.net to learn more about the podcast.